Hi everyone, welcome back to the garden. A garden which is just about clinging on. After a few sub-zero nights now, some storms, plenty of wind and rain, it's just about hanging in there, isn't it? In today's video, following on from the last one, I want to talk about the growth rate of the hardy palms in my garden. We've been here now for just over 5 years. Moved in August 2020, it's now the end of November 2025. So it's a great time to see how well these palms have actually grown. I've done videos talking about how plants start growing really after a few years in the ground. I've done videos with care tips, how to get your palms off to the best start possible and get the most growth out of them. But how well have they actually grown here in our North Lincolnshire garden? A garden which is relatively shaded, but with quite rich soil and usually quite good access to moisture. Well, let's get into it and find out. We're going to look at Trachycarpus fortunei, plants have been grown from pots and planted out here. We're going to look at transplanted Trachycarpus and then some of the feather palms. I think you might be able to guess some of the results, but a few of the others might just surprise you. So let's get into it. As the bracing winds pick up then, and you can hear the sound of these leaves clattering against each other, I want to talk first about the most commonly asked about palm that I grow here. These are Trachycarpus fortunei. Very tough, very hardy, very adaptable. But how well have they actually grown for me? Well, these here, Trachycarpus, the Chusan or Chinese windmill palm, they're supposed to be very tough, very easy, and also very tolerant of being moved, dug up, transplanted. All of these plants here I purchased with roughly, we'll say, 1 metre to 1.20 meters of trunk, which is around 4 foot, somewhere around there. Which means, inevitably, as they're only in around 30 to 40 litre pots, these plants were all field grown initially, literally grown in the ground somewhere else, then dug up, most of the roots unfortunately removed, most of the leaves removed, and then put in small pots to sell them on. Well, what I did when I bought these in around 2017, because we moved to a house where we didn't have a lot of ground to plant into, I put them all in large pots. Large meaning 130 to 160 litre. And they stayed in those pots till we moved here in August 2020. So these plants had roughly 3 years in pots. And during that time, let me tell you, they got everything they could have wanted. Plenty of moisture. They had really good compost, plenty of manure added, lots of fertiliser as well. Palm booster, palm focus, everything they needed to help them develop a strong, healthy root system and also plenty of lush, dark green leaves. But what you might notice is, as I show you the row with them, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which might suggest a lack of imagination when it comes to planting and garden design, but it's brilliant for comparing the growth rates and seeing just how much they differ. Let me head to this end here. The robin there, just flying away. This one here, second one in, look how poorly it's doing. This plant really isn't doing well. And the first point I want to mention is, regardless of what I mention in this video, all plants are different, they're variable. A plant can be treated in different ways. You wouldn't even notice when you're buying it. You might not notice the soil in that pot's particularly poor. You might not know how little it's been watered while it was at the shop or garden centre. There's a lot of factors that can go into a plant before you even buy it. But this one you can see, not only is it, well, it's not really grown much. The panel behind there is a 5-foot panel, I'd say, with a gravel board. At the top, you've got a foot of trellis. So we'll say up to the top of that fence is 5 foot there, just that mark there. So this plant has only really grown a foot in about 8 years, which is pretty pitiful. And in addition to that, the leaves, well, it can't hold many green leaves. They quickly turn brown, yellow. It's not in the best of health. Despite that, I'm obviously persisting with it. I just want to use this one as an example to say, not every palm grows the same way. Not every plant grows the same way. This one isn't the best example. But it's not all doom and gloom, because this one here initially didn't look like it was doing very well either, but over the past couple of years, it's really perked up now. This one's actually a very nice looking palm. It's got quite short petioles, the leaf stalks, holds itself really nicely. So I do actually really like this palm now. And whilst it isn't growing quite as fast as the ones up there, definitely very solid. So that one there has grown, we'll say around 1.5 foot, somewhere around there. So about 450 mil. So again, reasonably decent, but nowhere near as fast as a young palm planted out in the ground. But we'll get onto that. So we head up this way, you will see the biggest one of the group. This magnificent beastie here. Like I mentioned, these palms are all given virtually identical care. They all look basically the same when I bought them, but just look how well this one's grown. Again, using the fence as a height, this one is well over a foot taller than the trellis. So I would say you're talking about a 7-foot trunk now, which means that it's grown 3 foot in that time. So although 3 years was spent in a pot where it was never going to grow particularly rapidly, it's now had 5 years in the ground. So 5 years plus a few years in a pot, definitely this one here has grown over 3 foot, which is a decent growth rate. So all in all, I think if you're buying palms to get that instant impact, you need to be prepared that they don't grow as fast as you might hear quoted. Often people talk about Trachycarpus growing a foot of trunk a year, and that's fine for plants that are settled in. It's fine for young plants. But if you've just bought a plant from a garden centre, nursery, specialist, just be prepared. If it's got a large trunk and it's in a small pot, you're going to have to be patient. And whilst they will all eventually get there, I'm sure, a lot of those plants have received quite brutal treatment being dug up, so you can't expect the fastest growth rates. Be a little bit patient. I would recommend Palm Booster, Palm Focus, a good rich soil, nice amounts of moisture. That seems to be the key. So as you can see, there's benefits to, by and large, you get that instant impact. I wouldn't have been able to create this whole tropical look so quickly without that. But a result of that has meant that the plants have been a lot slower to grow subsequently. Just to counter that, let me show you some Trachycarpus that I planted smaller, and you might get an idea about the growth rates that you could unlock. Just to build things up then, let's look at this end plant here. Well, it's actually another row of 3, but the palms at each end were both, well, struggling-ish little trackies in 30-litre pots. They had around a foot of trunk, 300 mil, and as you can see, they've still got roughly around 300 mil of trunk. Don't go wrong, they have started to grow upwards now, plenty more green leaves. They aren't looking completely unhealthy. These, again, have been in the ground for 5 years. They've not grown substantially. What's the reason for that? Well, people who've watched my garden project videos, you probably know. This part of my garden is incredibly dry. It's got a lot of root competition. There's plenty of trees here, big conifers back there, ivies growing up these cherry trees, a lot of very vigorous plants, all placing a strong demand on the soil. So as a result, these palms really haven't grown well. And one thing that I would like to clarify, again, if you've not seen many of my other videos, palms are not desert plants. I know we get this idea in our head of palms being very, very drought tolerant and thriving in arid countries. Yes, a lot of them do, and most of them are tolerant and adaptable in those conditions. But when it comes to Trachycarpus, they come from colder areas of Asia that often see quite high rainfall. To get Trachycarpus to grow, especially these fortunei here, they need a lot of moisture. And to illustrate that, let me now show you some plants that also went in at exactly the same size, 1 foot of trunk, but have grown much, much faster. Yes, look at these beauties in here. I mean, you will have to look past the weeds and the autumnal vignette that's appearing in front of them, but look at the trunks on these. These Trachycarpus fortunei were planted out at the same time as the one that you just saw, but positioned here in a bit of a, we'll say a bit of a furrow in this bed at the back there, and given more moisture, particularly during summer, these have grown completely differently. They're just so lush, so healthy. I mean, look at all those leaves on them. They're really substantial plants now. The top of those leaves, it's definitely taller than me now. So you may be touching 7.5, 8 foot, around 2.5 meters to the very top of those leaves there. And when it comes to the actual trunks themselves, these now, I'd say you're looking at a solid metre plus of trunk, possibly a little bit more. And these ones weren't even particularly good plants when they went in. They were the runts of the litter, so to speak. A few that had left over the 30-litre pots. I'll show you a picture of how big they were when they went in. So in 5 years, these plants have grown substantially, magnificently, and they're incredibly healthy as well. Just look at all those leaves. So one big advantage, I'd say, of starting small, I know I've mentioned this before, is that you get a much healthier palm and you get much faster growth rates. So in 5 years, these plants aren't far off really growing 2/3 of a foot, somewhere around there, maybe around 200 mil of trunk a year. They've really done well. Give them a year or so to settle in, and then they've rocked it away. And it's not just the overall height of the plant, it's also the way it holds itself. Look at the leaves. You've literally got leaves all the way down to the base. And a plant can only really hold on to this many leaves if it's a healthy, strong plant with a thriving, established root system. Unfortunately, when you buy any large Trachycarpus, it's had most of those roots chopped off, so it's going to take a long time to recover, to get back to that, and lots of them, as you've just seen, can sulk for many, many years. So whilst, yes, there is an instant impact, and I know 5 years to some of you might sound like a long time, but let's face it, if you've got the time, there's a lot to be said for planting small. Rather than having basically a stick-like trunk with some leaves on top, you've got this magnificent column of exotic foliage, a beautiful plant indeed. And here I've got 3 of them, all of which seem to have grown pretty comparably well. Beautiful plants now, and you've got these gorgeous leaves to look at. So there's definitely a lot to be said for saving your money, start small. These were maybe £10 plants when I got them, very little things, but now they're a substantial feature in the garden. And I wouldn't mind betting a good amount of money that in a couple of years' time, these will almost overtake the row of large ones that I've got up there in the jungle. Definitely plant small, grow tall. There's a lot to be said for that. But I have also given these plenty of moisture. And like I said, the only thing that separates these magnificent beauties from the ones over here is very simply water and a bit of additional feed. So it's not just about the size you buy your palm at, but also the care you give it. And I will put a link in the description below to some of the videos I've done about palm care, feeding, and how I look after mine through the seasons. Long-time viewers of my channel, you will know that this palm here, Trachycarpus wagnerianus or Waggy, this is one of my absolute favourites and my personally most recommended palm for UK gardens. A lot more wind resistant than fortunei. I found the growth rate to be pretty comparable. And in fact, this one here, I got a good deal on this one, a 4-foot trunk again. It was less than 100 quid. I planted it out, and again, it's grown probably 2-foot of trunk in the last 5 years. So it's similar to the fortunei, but more importantly, it holds itself really well. This one always seems to hold a nice crown of beautiful green leaves. It's done very well, particularly considering the shade, or maybe because of it. Because I think a lot of these fortunei and Waggys, they would actually rather have a little bit of shade and shelter rather than being burning out in full sun and not getting enough moisture. But the fastest growing Waggy I've got is one actually out the front of the house. Planted out as a very small little thing. It's now a monster. And that's really without regular watering. But I think a nice shady shelter spot just tucked in behind the bins. And like a lot of plants, the magic really is not looking at it. Yes, if you want a plant to grow, they never grow, do they? But if you just leave them to it, they always surprise you with how fast they grow. But Waggys on the whole, I think, the growth rate seems to be, in my experience, relatively similar to fortunei. Beautiful palms, particularly at this size. But if you really want a fast trachy, you've got to look at Trachycarpus nova. I'm not sure if the name's changed, or it might be changing soon, but this nova here really shows the growth rate. Yes, I featured this one in my last video when I mentioned evergreen exotic plants. Just look at this beauty here. Very graceful. Beautiful long petioles on it. It's a very wide palm, definitely a little looser looking than fortunei and certainly nowhere near as rigid leaves as the Waggy, but I think these have got their own beauty. And even though this one does actually get battered around by the winds a lot, it doesn't look bad. It certainly doesn't look much worse than a fortunei, and I actually think the whole look of the plant really lends itself well to a jungle tropical style planting scheme. But when it comes to the growth rate though, that's where things really get interesting. This palm here, I bought as a 2-litre plant in around 2017. And when we moved house, I think it was in around a 30-litre pot. I planted it out here in autumn of 2020. So in 5 years, it's gone from a very small plant with less than a foot of trunk to now, if you look at the fence panel behind it there, I'd say that's 1.5 metres, 5-foot panel. It's taller than that. So this palm here has genuinely grown nearly a foot of trunk a year, which is incredibly impressive. Yes, it speaks volumes for planting small, letting the plant establish nicely, giving it plenty of moisture, plenty of feed, and also encouraging a good, rich soil. But I think the other thing as well is Nova are just a very, very fast palm. They're absolute rockets. If you want a fast growing trachy, head to some of the specialist growers in the UK and get some of these. Victor Silva, the palm grower, Hardy Palms, I think Dirt Cheap Plants. There's quite a few people that sell these now, but don't be afraid of buying small. Plant them with maybe around a foot of trunk and you'll have something like this in 5 years. And in all honesty, if someone was looking at my garden and they weren't particularly into the plants, this visually, fundamentally looks the same as those over there, which, like I said, cost around 100 quid when I bought them. And now you can expect to pay, well, I think 150 quid in B&M, or maybe double that for more reputable plant sellers. So there's definitely a lot to be said for planting small. You will get the results in that sort of 5, 6, 7 year bracket. But if you want an absolute rocket of a Trachycarpus, Nova really is the way forwards. Obviously, regular viewers will know there is another palm that I have to feature here, and it's this one here, as I get bashed by the tree fern fronds. This is a beautiful princeps new form hybrid. A hybrid between fortunei and princeps. This is an absolute beast when it comes to growing. In fact, let me show you down here. Look at the trunk on this. I bought this in 2017, and it was around, we'll say 15 litre pot, something like that. And this was actually planted at our old house. So a transplant, you might think it's going to set it back, but it hadn't been in the ground that long, a few years. It was quite small, and I made a real strong effort to get as much of the root out as possible. So by the time I dug it up, it was definitely in a 70 litre pot. I planted out here with, again, quite a sturdy small trunk, and just look at it now. It really is such a beautiful plant. Using the fence behind it now for definitely an accurate measurement, I would say, well, in fact, looking at my own height, this palm now has got a 7-foot trunk. So if you think I bought it as a less than 1 foot, when I planted out, it was probably a couple of feet at most, probably about 1.5 foot. This palm here has actually grown definitely a foot a year. A foot a year of trunk. It's a magnificent plant. So for this one here, transplanting it, it's barely even set it back at all. It's grown considerably faster than the fortunei, and it really is a beautiful plant. I honestly think when it comes to the plants in my garden that give me the most joy, that give me the most satisfaction, particularly during the colder months, this Trachy's got to be up there. Very tough, very hardy, beautiful big leaves, and the colouring, the silvery blue on the undersides, particularly when you come out at night or you see a frost on them, it really is something else. So if you want a fast Trachycarpus, if you're not afraid of planting small, honestly, I would go with this hybrid every time over fortunei. They've just got that certain extra something. Don't get me wrong, fortunei, they really are great. But if I was replanting this border again, I think I would go with those hybrids. Big leaves, real beauty, a magnificent plant. But let me show you, just to go back here, another Trachycarpus fortunei that I transplanted, again to give you a bit of balance. Real world experiences. In the middle there, you'll see a fortunei that I dug up at the old house. If you want to know how big the trunk of that, well, it was basically exactly the same size it is now. This one transplanted, again, I did my best to get all the roots possible, and it sat there. It's hardly grown at all. It was a very strong growing young plant at the old house for a few years, and then I dug it up and it's completely stopped it. So could that be, again, down to how dry this part of the garden is? I suspect so. I think, like with all plants, Trachycarpus, if you're looking at growth rate, you need to take into account that different palms, different individual plants, the growth rates will vary. Some plants get set back by digging them up, other plants just romp away as though it didn't happen. Best practice, digging up at the right time of the year, all those kind of things really help. But I think the biggest single thing is choosing a fast plant if you want a fast one. Go for a Nova, go for one of the Princeps hybrid. If you're going to transplant it, get as much root as possible. But the most critical thing in terms of care is that moisture, and it is also the feeding. Because these ones, this fence line here, I barely feed them at all. But in this part of the garden, the real jungle, they get all the water that I've used to water the gunneras and other plants around it, and these have had a nice dose of feed a couple of times a year as well. So really, this Nova, and behind it, the beautiful Princeps hybrid. Strong plants, looked after well, the growth rate really will surprise you. But that's enough of fan palms. Let's look at some of the feather palms in my garden and see just how fast they've actually grown for me. Now the tangle of persicaria, salvias and other vegetation has started to be pushed back. You can see the true size of this palm. Butia eriospatha or eriospatha. This beautiful feather palm is supposed to be one of the toughest and most suitable for growing in colder Northern Europe and UK locations. And I've got to say, I would agree with that. Truly a beautiful thing. Very graceful, very green. I love the way the leaves just sort of hang nicely. Truly a stunning thing. And now the wingspan on it, it's quite hard to show you really. But I'd say each of those leaves is now a couple of meters across. So overall the plant reaches out probably 4+ meters and it's starting to get some nice height to it as well. This plant here has survived for 5 years in the ground. We've had some cold weather in that time. It has actually, 2022, nibbled away. But other than a little bit of damage to the ends of the leaves, this palm has just kept growing and growing and growing. Again, it was transplanted from the old house, but I put in my best effort to actually get as much of the root ball as possible. And I'm sure it's paid off, because this plant now is really developing a nice trunk. It's hard to convey the overall size of these things, but this palm now has really developed nicely. It's gone from something that would look at home in a 70-litre pot to now that would really need a pot well over 160 litres just for that trunk to look the right size. It's getting to be a bit of a monster, and hopefully now at that crucial tipping point where it's really going to start growing quickly, sizing up and actually building up a strong trunking base. Truly lovely palm. This is one where the first year or so I didn't really think it'd grown fast, but then it started to pick up really motorway. If you live in a colder location, not the very coldest parts of the UK or the continent, but if you see winters where the temperatures don't get much under -5, I've got to say this beauty from South America is a very strong choice. A truly beautiful palm, and here I haven't really given it much in the way of protection other than a bit of fleecing during the very, very coldest weather, and it really has grown magnificently. Obviously though, just to make the point, feather palms won't grow anywhere near as fast as your Trachycarpus here in the UK. We simply don't have enough heat. Our summers can often be cooler. Even when we do get hotter summers, it's usually only a few weeks, isn't it, of really hot weather. But despite that, this palm has grown well. And just keep in mind, we are here in North Lincolnshire, not the warmest part of the country. And this palm, as you can see at the minute, is in plenty of shade. So in fact, as the cherry tree leaves up there, most of this garden here doesn't actually see much in the way of midday sun during summer anyway. So in a less than optimal location, in a less than optimal spot in my garden, this palm has still grown fantastically well, and one that I would definitely recommend if you're researching palms for your garden here in the UK. To round out then this 5-year growth rate video, I wanted to show you this, my favourite cold hardy palm, Jubaea chilensis, or Chilean wine palm. I mean, this palm is just developed so well. They are a very slow growing, stately, magnificent palm. And actually this one here came from Nigel at Hardy Palms. I bought it in a 160 litre pot. And the trunk was, we'll say around the size of a rugby ball, maybe a little bit larger, somewhere around there. But now you can see the size. If I put my hand next to it, you see the size. It's substantially different. In fact, I'm probably showing you how small it is there. It looks significantly bigger there. This trunk now, I would say you're looking at around 800 mil, maybe about 2.5 foot across. It really is starting to size up very nicely indeed. A beautiful palm. These are considerably more expensive these days. If you want to see what you can get for 1,200 quid, then check out my video over at Mark's Crazy Tiki Garden, where we planted one this summer. A truly beautiful centerpiece. But this one, you can see what 5 years has actually done for it. It's important to, we'll say, temper your expectations. Yes, the Trachycarpus grow upright very quickly, but when it comes to feather palms like this, they want to grow outwards. They really want to settle in, and that trunk has got a lot of bulking up to do before it's going to really start erupting upwards. So definitely be patient. But with a sunny-ish spot in my garden, raised up here to hopefully improve winter drainage and help the soil warm up a little bit quicker in spring, given plenty of feeding. I could have maybe watered it a bit more this year, but I try to prioritise the tree ferns and other real water-loving plants. This palm, it's grown very, very well. I think an important thing to stress though is, like the Waggies, although I enjoy seeing these palms size up, get bigger and bigger, they're definitely something to appreciate at whatever size they are. They truly look beautiful, magnificent. Jubaea chilensis is just my favourite palms. You've got all the words like structural, sculptural, statuesque. This plant has it all. It's got such a beautiful presence to it. Whether you're using it in a raised bed like Mark, a real focal point centrepiece of the garden, or here, just demanding attention in this Mediterranean desert island style bed, I absolutely love them. Such a beastly plant, but definitely one that takes its time to grow. But when you do look at it after a few years, after 5 years, they're bulked up considerably. That palm now, the base fit, it's probably twice the size, probably 3 times the size that it was just 5 or 6 years ago. It really is starting to be a monster. And if you want to see just how big these palms get in another 5 to 10 years, check out Yorkshire Chris's videos and look at his absolute monster. His is really now it's above head height, starting to get very impressive indeed. You see up here, another one, bought from Big Plant Nursery, again 2018, the start of 2018, in a very small pot, potted it up, again, got planted out here. I think this one was 2021, so it's coming up to its 5-year anniversary. Not quite as big, but certainly not far off. And again, you've got that majestic wingspan. Truly one of my favourite palms. Obviously, those of you in slightly warmer locations, you'll definitely know that Washingtonia robusta, Phoenix canariensis are much, much faster when it comes to growing, particularly compared to our Trachycarpus, Jubaea and the Butia. But when it comes to plants that have actually persisted here in my garden, well, actually, I did plant a Phoenix canariensis. It looked fantastic in a 160 litre pot before I planted it. It looked beautiful out in the garden. But following the winter of 2022, well, there isn't a progress picture there because it doesn't live anymore. That plant has gone. So when it comes to plants that can actually survive and thrive here in a colder northern location, these are some of the palms that have actually grown well for me. The palms that have grown despite colder temperatures. -6, -7 is probably the coldest winter spell. So nothing truly cold in testing, I should probably stress that. But we've had ice days, we've had whole weeks of freezing weather, like in December of 2022, but the palms have kept growing. We've had cooler summers, we've had drier summers, but these adaptable, tough palms have really grown well despite all of that. What I would say to wrap the video up is a few really crucial tips. The first thing is, if you don't need that instant impact, if you don't need a tall trunk, maybe a 1.5 metre trunk like the ones you might have seen at B&M or other places this summer, then definitely consider starting small. As you've seen, in 5 years, younger plants with around a foot of trunk that you can buy for maybe £40, something like that, those palms have gone on to grow considerably better here. They're not quite at the same height, but they're not far off. They will definitely overtake those other palms over the next 2 or 3 years, of that I'm sure. You've got a more resilient, adaptable plant with a healthier, established root system. So if you can start small, particularly with these hardier Trachycarpus, I think it's well worth it. Not just for the money saving, but over 5 to 10 years, I think you will get a much stronger, healthier, more beautiful plant as a result. The next thing to stress, I've already mentioned, is moisture. Palms, like I said, they're not desert plants. They don't just thrive in desert locations. Yeah, sure, there's some varieties that really are tough and adaptable and probably some of the only plants that can live in those areas. But when it comes to the hardy palms that we can grow here in the UK, a lot of them really appreciate a lot of moisture, particularly during the summer growing season. That really is the ticket for growth, much more important than fertiliser even. As we looked at, the 2 smaller ones and the really struggling one in the middle in my drier part of the garden, those have hardly grown at all. And the only difference between those and the ones next to me here, the really tall 7-foot ones, is simply an abundance of moisture during summer. I water these ones a lot more. So watering really is hugely important. Sure, I'll probably give them a bit more feed as well, but I think overall, watering for Trachycarpus and indeed the Jubaea and other palms during the summer months, particularly when we have those dry heatwave spells, it really does make all the difference when it comes to growth rates. Obviously, I will counter that. I am sensible. I haven't watered this Jubaea as much this year. We haven't had a hosepipe ban here, but this certainly isn't my priority when it comes to watering during a proper heat wave. But if you can give them moisture, definitely they will grow significantly faster. And I think probably the third thing that I will stress is, whatever plant you're choosing for your garden, just have an awareness about how fast it will grow and what it will develop into. The Trachycarpus, yes, they will grow fast. They're going to grow upright. They've got a pretty standard set size that they'll get to, around say 2.5, 3 meters across, and they will just reach that size and keep growing up. But palms like this Jubaea here, whatever size you buy your Jubaea at, it's going to grow slowly. They're definitely, just take the time. They're nowhere near the same league of growth rate as a Trachycarpus are, but that doesn't mean they're not impressive. You just need to be aware of what plant you're buying and what it's actually going to do over the next 10 years. So like I mentioned, if you want to see how this palm will hopefully develop over the next 10 years, have a look at Yorkshire Chris's videos and you'll really see there. This palm though, for me, I get a lot of satisfaction just seeing every year it getting that little bit bigger, and very soon it's going to start trunking. It's really going to look just exceptional. That column of trunk, they really are such a majestic, monumental palm. And although it's not tall in the scheme of things yet, definitely a beautiful thing that's getting bigger and bigger by the year. So there we go, a quick look at the growth rates of some palms in my garden following 5 years in the ground. Choose the right variety if you want the fast one. If you want to go big, go for the Nova, the Princeps. But if you want a sturdy, monumental beast for palm in your garden, my favourite is still the Jubaea, even if it's a little bit slower at actually getting there. Let me know in the comments below if you've got any questions about growing these palms in the UK or another colder climate country, and I'll do my best to help you out. Thanks a lot as always for watching. I hope you had a great weekend, and I'll see you all very soon. See you later.